first
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get started. We'll begin with the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You should have received the minutes of September 10th, 2024 through our correspondence. Are there any additions, corrections, additions to the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
First by Kay, second by Dean. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Do we have any public comment today? I have no one signed up, but is there anybody here to make public comment otherwise? Not seeing anyone, I'll move on to planning. Road safety audit. Project updates. Charles Radsky will be making the presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Last April, NERC entered a contract with Cordino LLC of Indianapolis to conduct 2 rounds of road safety audits. 1 round in 2024, calendar year 2024, and 1 round in calendar year 2025. NERC intends to continue doing road safety audits annually. And what we are planning on doing is doing a 2-year contract with a consultant. So every 2 years, we'll enter a new contract with a new consultant. Or it could be the same consultant, but this way we can learn as we go along, and if something doesn't work, then we know we can change it, or we're on with it for 2 years. Plus, there's several good, excellent consultants out there, and we want to give everybody a chance to bid on these road safety audits. For the first round of road safety audits, NERC solicited project locations from all the LPAs. We had a simple form, 5 questions, I believe. One question was your name. Another question was what town are you with, what municipality you're with. So it was really simple, really easy to do. Basically, you dropped a pin on a map and give a 1-sentence or 2-sentence comment about the location. After the initial meeting, a list was narrowed down. We had 13 applications, 13 locations that were given to us by 6 LPAs. After we got 13 of them, after initially consulting with them, we narrowed that down to 9. 9 locations which we did audits with. To continue with that, I will let Cordino take over and describe the road safety audits.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me here today. My name is Mark Reinhardt. I am a senior planner with Cordino and Cordino's project manager for this project. I'm going to provide just a quick overview of the process, just very brief because Charles has already provided some context, and then a little bit about the how and why we do this road safety audit process and why it's important, and then show a case example from this from the work that we did this year with the city of Hammond. So just for a quick overview, we developed these road safety audits using the 12 locations or 13 locations that were noted in the call for safety road safety audits. We held kickoff meetings with the 7 LPAs, and then during that we narrowed it down from the 12 locations to 9, so that we did the traffic analysis and a safety analysis, hosted field visits with all the location, or at all locations in September, and built consensus with everyone, all the LPAs, and also had local law enforcement there with us so that we could build consensus on some countermeasures that are near-term and long-term safety improvements, and then develop cost estimates for those improvements and draft RSA reports. We have completed all those steps and submitted a draft of all the RSA reports to NERC at closing of business yesterday. And so we'll do some review and then share those all with you soon, with the hope that if you want to use these as part of your HSIP applications in this year's NOFA, you'll be able to do so. But to provide a little bit of background context of kind of why we do this, I saw this quote at a federal highway safety workshop recently, and I really liked it because it ties in public health concepts into the transportation planning and traffic engineering industry, and it talks about trying to get to that cause of what causes, especially the severe crashes. So the quote, in road injury epidemiology, kinetic energy is the pathogen. So what we're trying to say with that quote is that when we have injury and fatal related crashes occur, or when they occur, that the force caused by the kinetic energy released during the crash exceeds the amount a person can safely withstand. So what we're trying to get to is that kinetic energy is the cause of those severe crashes. And when you hear about Vision Zero planning or the safe systems approach that Federal Highway has released, it's trying to narrow in on how can we understand that how can we do a series of different improvements to reduce that kinetic energy, because we know crashes are inevitable, but if we can reduce that kinetic energy released in those crashes, we can start saving lives or reducing injuries. And that's kind of what we're trying to do through looking at a series of correlating factors, such as distracted driving. And now this slide, we could talk all day about correlating factors related to distracted driving behavior through like cell phone usage, passengers in vehicles being distracting, or the radio being distracting, or objects along the roadway, or multitasking while driving through eating or cell phone usage or anything like that. We see that those are some correlating factors on the driver's side. And then we also have on the physical environment a series of correlating factors that are tied to like speed of the roadway, how it's designed, how the intersections are configured, and how many conflict points there are within an intersection, lane widths, and also if there's presence of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure to make it safe access for people trying to access transit. And how we try to address those correlating factors is through policies, local ordinances, different campaigns like the Heads Up, Phones Down, Click It or Ticket, all those different marketing concepts that we've secured over the years, and to try to help drivers behave in a more safe way while they're driving. But also when we want to think about how can we make the roadway safer, we do things like the road safety audits or corridor studies. And when we try to address those correlating factors, we can help reduce the cause of those serious and fatal injuries. So how we do this RSA process for all of our projects, whether we're working with NERC or the state, is we first set up a project management plan that helps identify the roles and responsibilities as for all parties involved when it comes to communicating with the LPAs or communicating with NERC, and also data collection. Then we have the step 2, which is that first phase of our project, or first phase of the analysis step, which is collecting and analyzing crash data, collecting and analyzing traffic data, and we collect all that information, drill down to identify a series of different potential countermeasures for safety, as well as looking at how the existing traffic conditions and also future growth of traffic at an intersection will be impacting capacity of that intersection, so that making sure traffic capacity and safety are aligning with each other well with any sort of recommendations. We compile all that information from the safety and the traffic analysis and share that with the LPAs during a field check, where we can gain their input as well as input from local law enforcement that attended the field checks. So we can observe what's happening out in the field in real time, and also discuss the data that we have in our hands so that we can collaboratively identify a series of countermeasures and build consensus on some solutions that we can try to implement at the location. We take all that feedback and then develop cost estimates and draft up a report using, in this case for this one, we used INDOT's abbreviated RSA report. It kind of comes in a nice one page with all of the attachments of the work that we've done so far, and it's able to be used and submitted as part of the HSIP application. So for a case example that we did for this project, we looked at the intersection of Michigan Street and Columbia Avenue in Hammond. We looked at a couple different locations as well in Hammond, but we decided to focus on this one. And we noticed that within the last 3 years, there's 51 crashes at that intersection, 9 resulting in injuries. And then 18 of the crashes were left turn or right angle manner of collisions. I point those two types of manner collisions out because those are the ones when you think of a T-bone crash, and you know if you hear the word T-bone at a crash, you're going to be like, oh no, that's something bad's going to happen. That's what those kind of crashes are. That's when you have opposing traffic interacting with each other at the same time, and they end up colliding either through trying to make a left turn to jump ahead of traffic or running a red light while somebody's trying to make their left turn. That's what those kind of crashes are. And 35% of those types of crashes, which is actually all 18, which equates to 35%, occurred within the intersection, the heart of the intersection, rather than the approaches. We had a lot of rear-end crashes at the approaches and side swipes, which are common. But when you're looking at the intersection itself, if there's a lot of crashes happening in the intersection, especially those high conflict or high potential injury, that means there's something happened that's allowing them to permit some sort of permission to allow all those different movements happening at the same time. So we, to help kind of understand that information and get to see how it's all laid out, we developed the crash diagram, like you can see on the screen, that we shared during the field check. And then we used Purdue University's RoadHat software to generate a crash frequency and a crash severity scores for this intersection, to not only see the trends that were at the intersection, but also understand how severe the crashes are at that intersection. And so how we did that is, or how RoadHat does that through their methodology, is they'll take all the attributes that we say that are at this intersection, what kind of intersection it is, what kind of traffic volume it has there, and it will create an average based on peer intersections throughout the state. So it can identify like an average of how many crashes are anticipated at an intersection like this one, and then generates a standard deviation score. If you remember standard deviation from high school or college math classes, you got that nice bell curve, and the goal is to try to be in the middle of the bell curve, because that's right at the average. And then as you deviate different ways, it's either higher or lower than the average. And so with our standard deviation scores of a frequency of 2.37, that means that the frequency of crashes are in the above the 95th percentile for an intersection like this. And the crash severity is a little over the 68th percentile for above the average. So it just helps justify that we're seeing there is a concern that was wanting to be addressed here, and then we're seeing some of those trends with the types of crashes and movements that are happening there. And then we brought in some traffic counts. We collected counts on August 20th, and then did a level of service analysis, and then forecasted the traffic data out to a design year of 2050. That's just to help understand how traffic is going to grow over time, so that when we want to improve the intersection through a series of safety countermeasures, that those countermeasures aren't going to become a moot point by the year 2050. They're going to be helping address safety over time. And so we provided a table like this to the field check. So, and then we conducted our field check with Dean at this intersection, reviewed all that data that we just talked about, observed traffic patterns while we were out there to kind of get an understanding of what we're reading on paper and seeing out there, and then identified some solutions and built consensus on those recommendations. Which the recommendations that came out of that field check was for near term, something that can the city of Hammond can try to go out and implement quickly, is to just update current traffic signal heads and pedestrian signal heads and push buttons. Just having that updated technology following the current recommendations just will help with kind of move that needle towards safety. And then our first build alternative was first implement all the near-term upgrades, and then modify the signal phasing at the intersection to provide a protected left turn. So if you remember from that diagram or when I was describing those left turn and right angle movements, it's happening because there's permitted time for traffic, opposing traffic to interact with each other at the same time. When you have protected lefts, you're creating a phase of time for left turning movements to move freely without interacting with oncoming traffic. And it creates that additional safety that can be easily implemented and help address a lot of those trends that we're seeing out there. And then the longer term build recommendation was just evaluate the impacts of a roundabout at this intersection. It's a urban area. There's the right-of-way isn't as easily accessible in some of these in places like this. So we did an assessment to see how much right-of-way would have to get acquired in order to build a larger intersection for a roundabout like this, and then put together a pretty high-level estimate to understand how much that impact is, also how much utilities would be impacted, and then a rough construction cost. And like I said, all that information has been compiled together and put into a abbreviated RSA report, and it was shared with NERC yesterday, along with the same kind of information for all 9 other locations. And that's what I have for this project. So next steps, we're going to be submitting these to you all once we get some review and comments from NERC, and then submit final drafts, and then we're going to take all of this information, package it together in a final report for NERC as kind of the final steps of this project later this year.
Are there any questions for Mark? Not at this time. We'll have more questions in the room.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would just add that our goal is to have 0 crashes, 0 injuries, 0 deaths. That's really should be our goal, not meet the statistical mean or median for standard derivation. Also, I think the phrase would have been better said as kinetic energy is the killer rather than the pathogen. Because as we know with our crash barriers, we've seen substantial improvement in those, and like what we've seen, but reducing that kinetic energy. Something as simple as putting the guardrails down the middle of I-65 can really decrease the number of injuries and deaths from what I've seen. So just some thoughts that we need to support some of this innovation. Unfortunately, that's still a little lacking in my opinion. Could we do just a quick introduction round? I'm Kevin Breitsky, Porter County Surveyor and Chairman of this committee and NERC Executive Board.
I'm Tom Vanderwood, I'm NERC staff.
Floor Baum, NERC staff.
Dean Button, City of Hammond.
Martin Tomczyk, Porter County.
Kane Nelson, Northwest Indiana Forum.
Eric Tanis, Thunder Town Council.
George Topo, Union Township Trustee in Porter County.
Mark Waddell, Town Chesterton.
Charles Bresky, NERC staff.
Meredith Stillwell, NERC staff.
Hey,
Brian Snedeker, EFS.
Jeff Hewitt, Sherrville.
Grace Bender, NERC staff.
Staff for the first group.
Lori Latham, Westler Engineering.
thank you, Lori. Jake Amaral just had to leave, so he was just here. Let's move on to programming 4.1, public comment report, amendment 2403, fiscal year 2024-2028 transportation improvement program. Charles Bradsky showing today. Okay.
Welcome, yes, good morning again, everybody. Amendment 24-03 to the 2024 to 2028 TIP was released for a 21 public comment period, which began on September 11th, 2024. It will end tomorrow on October 2nd. When I originally put this out, I just want to mention that I originally thought that this meeting was on the 8th. So I was planning to give this spiel next week when the public comment period was done. So if anybody has any comments on the TIP projects in the TIP amendment, you have 24 hours, well, a little more than that, to get them in.
We'll listen.
Or otherwise hold your peace. No, actually, if anybody has any comments on any project at any time, I do take those and I do respond to those. But we do have a specified public comment period for projects on this TIP amendment. And it does end tomorrow. Amendment 24-03 is for infrastructure projects. There is no transit, and these are for federal highway funds. The amendment is available for viewing on NERC's website. To date, we have not received any public comment on any of the projects. However, NERC does submit the list of projects to the Interagency Consultation Group, which is a group of stakeholders, of federal and state partners, and they offer their comments on the projects. You can see on page 4, page 6 actually, there were 5 comments that they had. 3 of them were bridge projects, and basically they wanted to know if they were expansion projects or not. The answer is no, they're just simply bridge replacements. There was a question about Willow Creek Road, and that can be found in our MTB appendix for our conformity. And then the added turn lane on US 20 in Michigan City. This is an NDOT project. This project was actually in our TIP incorrectly. It was listed as a intersection improvement. I do not have access to those projects, so I do not check them for validity, or I just check to make sure that it is an amendment or it is an administrative modification. But diving into this, it appeared to be on first off, it said intersection improvement. So we believed it was intersection, but when we dug into it, there were a lot of, the description didn't match. And in talking with NDOT, it turned out that it was an added turn lane, and it was a mile. And the threshold is anything greater than 1 mile for air quality conformity. So this project is exempt. So that is the public comment report for this amendment. Moving on, the resolution 24-12 for TIP amendment 24-03, which I was just describing, is recommended we're asking for a recommendation from this board. On page 7 is a list of the projects, or a general description of the projects. NDOT has 28 of the projects. 13 of them are roadway or pavement rehabs, either significantly adding amount of projects, funding to the project, where 8 of them were carryover from previous TIP. I did notice that there were several, when we were putting this together, there were several projects that were coming up as carryover, and getting in looking at the projects, I found an error when NERC put together the TIP the spring of 2023. And when we submitted it, we did all the calculations. We used a table of the projects that NDOT gave us, as well as our projects. We did the calculations for air quality off of the table. But then when I was compiling it, I accidentally, left off a whole page of NDOT projects. So the TIP that got approved by NDOT and Federal Highway was missing 32 projects from NDOT. And through the course, we've noticed that there were just constantly 1 or 2 projects coming up that were not carried over for whatever reason. We're not carried into the TIP. They're they're in our TIP, our web-based TIP, but on the PDF they didn't appear, which is what is in this TIP. So at the last minute, we were able to include the last 17 of those projects into this TIP. Actually, there was, I think, 19 of them, but 2 of them were already in there, but then we had to include the last 17 projects. Again, going back to the list, 5 intersection modifications, 2 of them were carryover, 3 of them were adding significant amount of funds. There were bridge projects, 3 of them, 3 bridge projects, 1 new bridge project, 1 bridge rehab, 1 of them was carryover, actually 2 of them were carryover. 1 was a carryover, 2 of them were adding significant amount of funds. 2 small structural replacements, adding significant amount of funds. Intelligent Transportation System, ITS, that's often in correlation with the Gorman or I-65, adding cameras and so on and so forth. 5 of those were carryover from the previous TIP. And then there was 1 other new type project. I think that was the NEVI project. For locally sponsored project, there were 10 projects from Crown Point, LaPorte County, Portage, and Porter County. Intersection modification or improvements, that's a carryover from the previous TIP. 2 bicycle pedestrian, 1 was a deletion, another was adding significant amount of funds. There were 3 bridge projects, 2 of them were new, and 1 of them was adding a phase. There were other type projects, 2 of them were carryover from the previous TIP, and 1 was a new project, and then there was 1 new road project. So, are there any questions?
Was part of the problem the transfer from the RTIP?
No, it's a complete clerical error. When I was putting the TIP together in a PDF form, I lost the page.
We've been changing programs and stuff.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's in RTIP, so it shows the project in RTIP.
Right.
But if you look on the NDOT TIP page and you look at, if you look into NERC's webpage and look at the PDF, and the PDF is what NDOT and Federal Highway or federal partners approved, there are 32, there's a whole page of projects that were missing. And it completely clerical error.
You missed it? We missed it?
Yes, yes. And everybody missed it.
That's what I'm saying.
Because I missed throwing it in there. NDOT totally missed when they reviewed it. They missed the projects in there. So.
Would it help if we did quarterly meetings with in-house? We do with our own communities or?
Well, they're NDOT projects. So I don't know the solution to that, other than,
Be careful.
yes,
Okay.
I will be more careful next time, I guess. But,
Did anywhere on the tip have like the total amount of the R tip included, or did that missing page not roll up to a total cost?
no, it doesn't, there's nowhere in there that has total cost or total number of projects. Yeah, maybe I can throw that in there, but they do not provide that to us, so it could say 350 or it could say 370. Would they have caught it? I don't know. I think the only way someone would have caught it is if they were to happen to be looking for their project, for a particular project.
We're dealing with two different type of media. Just a PDF document won't add those things up necessarily.
Yeah, I was compiling the PDF and somehow,
Now we
This-
know it's there.
yeah, it's not there. So,
Any questions for Charles?
Move to make a favorable recommendation to the full commission of tip amendment 24-8.
Second. Was that Mark? You made the second. You made the first. Mark the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? So moved. Now we'll go to topical committee reports. Do we have any topical committee reports we have today? I don't think we do. Do we have Drive Clean Indiana report today? It's gonna be a little short. Staff announcements. And I don't see any staff announcements, and we have the upcoming NERC meetings listed, including executive board commission meeting will be October 17th. And we have anything else good for the order? Anybody? Anybody want to say anything? Not forever hold your peace.
Yeah, so I guess one staff announcement, just, this was discussed at the previous Transportation and Technical Planning Committee meeting, but the NOFA for the 2026 to 2030 TIP is currently open. Applications can be found on the NERC website. And if there are any questions as you're working through your application, feel free to reach out to Charles or to any member of the NERC staff, and we can help you fill that out.
Just looking for information on the new reorganized committee assignments. I know our council rep has been watching and hasn't seen anything come through.
They haven't made any decisions yet. That's coming up. We have a leadership committee meeting October 8th. And I assume that Chairman Dermody may have some information for us then, October 8th.
No, I'm sorry, if I may. It's
Please.
actually being changed to the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, a notice is going out today for that.
15th. So it should be prior to the executive board meeting the 17th. So leadership committee will be the 15th?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as it relates to that, there was a survey that was distributed to all the commissioners asking for their preference on which committee they'd like to serve on or designate a proxy. Some responses have been received. I won't say every commissioner submitted their response, so that's been a bit of a delay waiting for these responses to trickle in. My sense is that we are now at the point where we're kind of sorting through and going to be making those decisions fairly soon.
Chairman Dermody is just going to go forward with it. So get it in now. Any more discussion on any matter? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Mr. Topol, second. Thank you, Mary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. We're adjourned.